Welcome to Ha Long Bay, Vietnam, everyone. I'm Michael, and today, since we're in Vietnam, which we might call the home of new communism, affectionately, which basically means there's a lot of sort of capitalist things blended into Vietnam. We're going to talk a little bit about Vietnam, but in particular, how you can optimize tax-wise there. So there's a lot of people who are interested in moving to Southeast Asia. I'll talk a little bit about Vietnam compared to some of the other places, but also how to optimize your tax, because it's one of the places that I think gets overlooked a lot. And so as a result, it is very nice to bring it up and discuss kind of what some of the details are that people are maybe not so aware of. So let's dive in and talk about that right now. Now, for those who have not been to Vietnam or don't know too much about it, Vietnam is, first of all, the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia. It's basically done 10x in the last 20 years, approximately. And so very, very rapid growth. It is sort of the new China in terms of manufacturing. As China's cost of labor went up a lot and it was no longer the low-cost producer, a lot of that moved to Vietnam. And Vietnam tends to be a fairly efficient place to do business compared to some of the competing countries surrounding. And certainly I find that the people in Vietnam are incredibly welcoming. There's a really high level of service. That's awesome. I would consider it to be sort of like an underappreciated area of Southeast Asia. So the places that are most common that people talk about typically for kind of not expensive lifestyle, meaning not Hong Kong and Singapore, would typically be Thailand and Bali. So not the rest of Indonesia typically just Bali and Thailand. And look, there's like plenty to appreciate about that. Indonesia is not particularly tax friendly. People sort of get away with the fact that there are really poor enforcement there for the most part. There's some things you can do, but it's fairly difficult to do things legitimately. Thailand has historically been very good on the tax side. There have been some really great residency options. They have recently added a new visa, which I will talk about in a future video. But overall, you know, the big downside has been the fact that there haven't been, I would say, like low accessibility visas up until the recent. In contrast, if you look at Bali, Indonesia, you have pretty good access to visas. I personally find Bali's a bit small. It's kind of, there's quite a lot of friction I find in terms of Bali. Now it's gradually improving, but you know, things like the quality of internet, things like the ability to get around, it's extremely bad traffic, things like water sources, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, some people love it. You know, if you haven't been there, I definitely recommend checking it out. There's lots to love. However, it's, you know, far from the only place. Now, competing with some of those, you have Cambodia. Cambodia is not particularly great on the tax side, a beautiful country, but, you know, less developed. You could look at Laos, places like that. Again, there's some like less developed places. Then you have Malaysia, and I'm a big fan of Malaysia. There's lots to appreciate about it. The costs tend to be quite a bit lower than Thailand, or at least Bangkok versus KL, particularly in terms of cost of real estate. And so the value for the money is really great, and it tends to be a bit more polished, kind of in between Bangkok and Singapore. But then we have Philippines and Vietnam. And so today we're going to talk about Vietnam. At some point in the future, I may talk about Philippines. Vietnam feels underpriced to me. So for example, this morning I had kind of a lunch, or early lunch, I guess it was. And I had some noodles and beef, you know, a nice little, like reasonable dish, and it's $4, like unbelievably inexpensive. A lot of the accommodations, et cetera, are inexpensive. There's access to talent. It's a pretty big talent market, 100 million people basically. So that's pretty nice. And so there's lots to appreciate. When we're looking at it from the standpoint of taxes, there's a few things we want to consider. So local taxes are not especially low, but they're not especially high. Basically, it's more or less 20% for a lot of people, but you know, it could be up to 35%, and you know, it depends partially on how you're structured. So 20% corporate, and then there's a blended a graduated tax rate on the personal side. The interesting thing is not on, hey, listen, I'm going to earn money locally in Vietnam and pay taxes on it. That's not the like attractive thing. The thing that's attractive, similar to what you have in some place like Thailand, is you're in a situation where you have no management control rules. So the corporate residency rules are essentially based on where the company is registered. That's quite attractive. And number two, there's no CFC rules. So those two things make it very easy to have a foreign company and to benefit from it. The thing here is you're not going to get dividends tax-free, but you can get dividends at 5%. So 5% dividends is a fairly attractive tax rate. There's some nuances to how you want to structure things. There are some potentially good things on the capital gains side, but it depends on the type of capital gains you're looking at. So generally speaking, if somebody's going to live in Vietnam, what we're going to do for them is we're going to set them up with a foreign company somewhere. The foreign company is going to make the money. That company is hopefully going to pay as close to zero tax as possible. You may retain a lot of the money or maybe all of it in that company, and then aim to take out dividends at 5%. That's like more or less the general strategy that you're looking at when you're looking at Vietnam. So if you're interested in that, please, you know, reach out to us. I will do a video in the future talking a little bit about the residency options for Vietnam. But in the meantime, I mean, you can see Ha Long Bay, super beautiful. There is a lot of development that has been going on in Vietnam. It is still, I would say, a very poor country in a lot of regards, but very high level of service. Actually, like quite a lot of people who speak a very good English. So if you're looking at that, a lot of people who are becoming educated. One of my favorite graphic designers in the world is Vietnamese. So there's just some interesting things going on. And I think it's good for many people who are interested in the Southeast Asia region to consider it as an alternative to some of the kind of typical Bali, Thailand. It might not be your cup of tea. Of course, there's no one size fits all. Everything has its kind of own place, but definitely visit it, definitely check it out. And if you would like help with getting set up there or set up at some other place, optimizing your local tax, getting set up with banking, etc., please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or you can send a message through offshorecitizen.net. We will see you on the next video.